So in today's video, I'm going to talk about the biggest mistake that I see beginner golfers make, and most importantly, we're going to stop you making the same mistake. Right then guys, so golf for me is quite a strange sport with the way we practice, because the majority of sports that we actually practice, we rehearse in the same environment that we play. So tennis, you tend to practice on a tennis court, swimming, you practice in a pool. And yet golf can be a little unusual that we don't always practice on the golf course. Nowadays we practice on driving ranges, fields, so it can be a little different environment. I think that can be great in the sense that you can hit a lot of shots in a very short space of time. So we want to make sure that anytime you're investing in trying to make your game better, actually improves your golf. And what I'm going to discuss today is one thing I see, I'm going to say majority rather than all, but the majority of beginner golfers do in practice, and I would say a lot of high handicappers do this as well, that really makes it tough to take what they get very good at on the driving range out onto the golf course. And you're probably one of those golfers who might agree with that on the driving range, when you do this, you hit loads and loads of good shots. But you get out on the golf course, this thing I'm going to discuss changes, and you really struggle with that. But no more teasing. Let's find out what the biggest mistake that I see beginner golfers make. Right, so I think we've all done this as beginners. So we get down to the driving range. I know I'm in my studio, so we pop the ball up on a tee. We've had a few swings to begin with. We get the ball up on a tee. We start going, irrelevant of whether it's a little swing as a beginner or maybe a fuller swing, but we'll stand up there and think, that's absolutely perfect. And we just go shot after shot, really feel that we're making some nice improvements with our golf swing. As ever, I think the key thing is golfers see that the ball's going well. So they stand there again, put another good swing on it, and think, well, that one didn't feel quite as good, but it still went in the air and a decent distance. Now, the title at the start, though, was the biggest mistake I see beginners make. And the biggest mistake is constantly teeing the ball up. Because obviously when you go out on the golf course, you only get to hit your first shot on each hole with the ball on a tee. And in my experience, where a lot of golfers struggle is they'll go to the driving range and they'll put plenty of time in, which is fantastic, and they build some confidence. And when they first go out on the golf course, probably that first tee shot isn't as good as they'd expect, a little bit of nerves, everything that goes with that. But they get to their golf ball for their second shot, and all of a sudden, the golf ball's on the floor. And possibly to begin with, it doesn't create a massive issue, but they stand over the ball, make the same swing. Oh. And that's suddenly rolled along the floor 10 yards. And it might be a very helpful playing partner that then says, well, it's more difficult when it's on the floor. That's the last thing you need to hear. So let's make it that you stop making the mistake of hitting every single shot with the ball on a tee, and you start practicing hitting the ball from the ground, learning a couple of key skills that are vital if you're going to get solid contact when the ball's on the floor. But really, as a beginner, or possibly someone who's been playing a while that struggles with this contact, make sure that practice is actually making you better. So first thing we're going to talk about is, why is teeing the ball up maybe not the best thing to practice? So we'll pop the ball on the tee. And as ever, I'm going to use my little hula hoop. So your golf swing, in its very simple terms, is the club is moving in a circle around your body. Obviously much, much bigger than this. And as you stand to the side of the golf ball, the circle's on a little bit of an angle. So the club travels up and round you, down and back round, reaches its lowest point of its swing, and then it starts going back up. So what we would ideally like to see when the golf ball's on the floor is that the lowest point of our circle is actually ahead of the golf ball. And there's a lot of videos on this stuff, and I talk a lot about this with golfers. So the key is you want that lowest point of your swing after the golf ball so that you can get the golf ball and then the ground as contact. Now, another skill as well as that is actually the height of the golf swing. So the height of the arc. If the arc were to come back too high, even if the low point was great, you'd potentially still hit the top of the ball or miss the ball. But equally, if the arc was too low, and this will squash into the ground, we can see how actually I'd enter the turf well behind the golf ball, even if my low point was ahead. So it's controlling low point, but also controlling the height of the arc of your swing. Now, the negative for me with being up on the tee is you actually don't really learn how to control either of those things. And the one massive bit you don't learn is actually the height of the arc, because it's very easy for you to swing back with the club above the ground, even if the low point's behind the golf ball, and actually still strike the ball, get the ball in the air, and get a good shot, because the golf ball's in the air. So very, very quickly, and I'm not saying never hit any off the tee, because I think it's important that you do still practice off the tee, but I want you to get into the habit of putting the ball on the floor so you get some good feedback. And I always think for a lot of golfers, there's maybe a couple little steps you need to go through if you're going to get good with this. So the first thing I would do is I would leave a golf ball there and just have an idea of like a line on the ground, set up, and I would actually just make a swing and actually just try and touch the ground at all. And what you'll see with a lot of golfers who have practiced off a tee, they'll make pretty good movements, but there's no contact with the ground. So you can imagine when the golf ball's there, if you never make contact with the ground, you won't be super impressed when you hit a shot like that that goes 2 yards. So the first thing I think you always need to do is actually be touching the ground at all. So that was good. Definitely touch the ground. Definitely touch the ground. Now, then start paying attention when the golf ball's there as to where you touched the ground. So if I were to make a swing, definitely touch the ground way back here, okay? So just because I touched the ground there doesn't mean that's the lowest point of my swing. I think as I hit the ground there, the club would have continued down into grass. So my low point might have still been ahead of the golf ball. So then I'd adjust a little bit of the height of the swing. And that's where it can be good using a tee, is you might actually be quite good controlling, swinging back an inch from the ground. Then potentially you could go a little lower with the tee, a little lower, and then down to the ground. But I like golfers to get straight down onto the ground and challenge themselves. So I'd do another swing, feel like I did before, and definitely again felt well behind the golf ball. So I'd try and hit a shot like that. Now the good news is, it was in the air, and it was a reasonable distance, but it definitely felt that hit well back behind the golf ball. So I always think feedback's really, really important, and accurate feedback most important. Now in my coaching sessions, I'll use TrackMan. Obviously when you're practicing, you won't have that, but I think it's quite easy to understand that you've hit well behind the ball. If you can though, try not to say you've hit too much ground, because I think as soon as you say too much, straight away you want to swing back a lot higher, and then again you'll just top the golf ball. So all I would say there is, I definitely hit the ground. My first thought now then is, yes, I'm catching the ground back here. So what I would do is I would try and hit this side of the golf ball in my practice swing. Okay, so that was better. It was still behind, but felt much more that way. And in order to do that, when I get to the top of my backswing, I'm feeling that I'm moving to my left side towards the target earlier, and that's definitely moving my low point a little bit forward. So that's a start. So again, let's hit another shot, and let's see if that makes the shot better. That's lovely. And for a lot of golfers, that might even be the best shot they've ever hit from the floor. But it still felt like I just hit the ground a little bit behind the golf ball. So I feel my low point's good. So one of those two key skills, low point control, I'm definitely moving that further forward. That's good. So then height of the swing. I think that's important now. So what I would then try is I want to try and feel that when I hit the ground, I'm just touching the ground. So just a little bit of noise. So that felt really good. That felt good. Now, obviously, when you're out on grass, that might be more down to then depth of divot. So if you're somebody who takes no divot, you probably need to move your arc a little bit lower and maybe that low point a little forward. If you're somebody who takes big divots, potentially for you, raising up that bottom of the arc could be a big advantage. So let's go again. I'm going to try and just touch the ground, but again, have that feeling that I had that weight moving towards the target. Okay, so a little bit low. So on that one, I've definitely raised up a little bit. Maybe a bit too much. I don't think I touched the ground at all there. But all of these shots here, potentially off a tee, I'm still getting good results, and yet I'm making quite different movements. And I just think this is why it's so important to get the ball on the floor, get good at these skills, so when you go out on the golf course, you can really enjoy hitting shots with all your clubs. So let's go again. Let's feel like we just touched the ground. And that's the best shot I've hit so far. And it's amazing. I've done that obviously quite quickly. That might take you a basket of golf balls to be a little bit more consistent with that. But I'm a big believer that when you go away and you've had a practice session of hitting it well off the tee, even on the driving range, there's that temptation to want to hit one off the floor or a couple off the floor. And when you hit those bad shots, you go back to the tee, hit good ones, but you leave kind of knowing that when you get on the golf course, you're maybe going to struggle a bit. And I think the satisfaction you can take from getting good with the ball on the floor and understanding about low point ahead and height of the swing, if you can start hitting balls from the ground very, very early on, or certainly in the majority of your practice, you're really going to stop making that huge mistake that I see beginners make and really start improving your golf swing. Right then, guys, so be honest. Were you or are you one of those golfers who predominantly practices with the ball on the tee? Just comment below. It's really interesting for me, to see how many of these people watching actually make these mistakes. Probably more importantly, have you gone away and practiced what we've spoken on this video, and has it improved your golf? I really want to hear from you guys. That's why I do my videos, is to help you play better and enjoy your golf more. But yeah, please comment below. Let me know if you're somebody who struggled with this, and off the back of this video, you're hitting better shots. If you are, I love that. That's absolutely what this is about. If you have enjoyed today's video though, and you don't currently subscribe to my channel, please consider clicking the button below, ring the notification bell, then you'll find out whenever I drop a new video. Follow me on all my social media platforms, all under Ali Taylor Golf. Hopefully catch up with some of you guys down here soon. Stay in contact.